Okay, here we are. Danny.
Wonderful. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Michael and Danny show again. And we have a very, very special guest today. He has mastered countless records. You, in all likelihood, have many of his amazing records. And of course, the man that I'm speaking of is none other than Kevin Gray. Kevin, you and I have known each other for what, almost 20 years, I want to say.
It's been a long time, yeah.
I was trying to figure when we first met, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was Kavi and I were driving with 1-inch master tapes to your old studio,
right,
to get the Meeting by the River,
right,
on Tim's famous C36 or C37.
C37 1-inch, yeah.
And that was when we first met, which is now what, 2002, 3? When was that?
I don't remember. I think I actually had met you prior to that in one of the rooms at either CES or one of the audio shows. I think it was who's the guy that has the audio company up near Camarillo, up near.
Wait, gosh,
it's really kind of neither here nor there, but I think that actually is where I first met you.
Could very well be. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us. Obviously,
my pleasure.
Michael Ludwig's has really kicked off this whole vinyl community into high gear with phenomenal content over the last year. And Michael and I met about 6 months ago, and we kind of put some ideas together on how we can take things to the next level, and feature some really incredible guests. And I started my own channel about a month ago, and I figured, hey, you know what, I can't think of a person that I'd love to have more on than Kevin. So thanks for making the time to join us, and look forward to a great discussion.
All right,
I think the only way we can top this is Elvis Presley.
Okay. That's well, right. I actually have contacts with him, but I can't talk about that.
But maybe
so he's alive.
We got to wait for the government to release their UFO stuff first.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, but then you just hit something. I looked up over at Discogs and type in the name Kevin Gray, and there are 2,347 vinyls.
Is that all?
Is that all?
Just kidding.
Oh, that's of course quite something. And maybe
Discogs has been good to me. They actually contact me directly with questions sometimes, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, maybe let's start with a question. A very special question I would love to ask you since a very long time. I've put out, for starters, 3 records. Analog Production, Lee Morgan, The Sidewinder.
Love that record.
Master Engineer, guess who? Kevin Gray. Music Matters Jazz, SRX version, Lee Morgan, The Sidewinder. Master Engineer, Kevin Gray. Blue Note, Classic Series, Lee Morgan, The Sidewinder, Master Engineer, Kevin Gray. The most striking.
Well, that's why I've mastered 350 Blue Notes. I just keep doing the same titles over and over again.
So this has been done over the years. Is there something as a detectable tape degradation you can detect? How do you handle it? Is it there? Is it not there? What can you tell us about this topic?
I haven't really noticed much in the way of tape deterioration. I mean, those old Scotch 111 tapes, if the oxide doesn't flake off of them, which can happen with improper storage, they seem to go forever. I suppose things could happen to them, but Capitol's been storing them very, very well. So yeah, it hasn't really been an issue.
And how does this tapes get to you?
Hand delivered by
FedEx on the
messenger.
floor or
No, they're messengered from the Capitol Tower. We work with a guy named Jack Arenas over there. He's a wonderful archivist and knows what they've got. And always, you know, if there's a question about, well, which one do you think is really the master? Because sometimes there are some labeling questions. Anyway, he's really good about that. And he's really good about making sure that they get to me and that they get back safely.
You know, interesting you bring that up, Kevin. One of the big sort of pet peeves of mine that I've talked about countless times is when you look at, for example, the movie industry and how they store their film vis-a-vis how, you know, the music industry stores master tapes, right? And I'm not even talking about digital files. I'm just strictly looking at
Analog.
physical media.
Uh-huh.
You know, I see stark differences, and you just sort of alluded to one of them, which is, well, you know, I don't know, was this the master tape? Was this the master tape? Is this a dub? Was this a safety? Whereas on the film side of things, you know, I sincerely doubt Christopher Nolan is going to be in a vault trying to figure out, gee, I wonder, was this the real that we shot, or is this a copy? Right.
Right.
Is there, you know, historically speaking, can you add a little color to that for us? I mean, what's the story there?
Well, first of all, I should mention that I wasn't referring to the Sidewinder and that type of title. I was referring to like things that maybe have never been released and have maybe never been assembled. So there might be 2 or 3 reels. They're not sure, you know, that kind of thing. Because they you know, they know on the masters, what are the master, you know, on the basic catalog stuff that's been reissued to date. And the only other thing I really can add to that is that the other label that I also do a lot of work with, and I'm vetted to receive their master tapes, is Warner, and they're also very, very good. Maggie, my cat's getting on me. They're very, very good about keeping track of what they've got, and they've got the most amazing like fire extinguisher system and security for their vault. Very impressive.
Okay. So we don't really have an issue with, you know, gee, where's all the tapes? I mean, sometimes you hear horror stories. What Ian Anderson kept his tapes under his bed.
Yes. Yes.
So I guess sometimes it comes
Aqualung.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is sort of crazy. Oh, gee, you know, let me. Oh yeah.
Had some interesting discussions with Ian. Yeah, back in the day.
I can only imagine.
Well, you know, that record was apparently encoded with a Dolby A301, and he was insistent that it be played back with a Dolby A301. And I said, no problem, I got one. Oh, okay. You know.
When you just said it, you've done how many Blue Notes? Over 500 remasters?
Well, 350 by my best count. I don't. It could be more. I know it's at least 300.
Okay, at least 350. That's quite something. When it comes
but
to,
like I said, some of those were done multiple times, so I don't know if we can really count that.
When you see this Blue Note thing, I only can imagine with an educated guess. When it comes to Blue Note, in a way, you have every time the same room, the same arrangement, or 2 rooms over the history, the same arrangement, the same.
Yeah, Hackensack and Ringlewood Cliffs. Yeah.
That probably helps if you compare it to, let's say, 70s, 80s rock music.
Right. Oh, for sure.
How is the difference when you, for example, when you've done this fantastic Fleetwood Mac Rumors? It's quite something different, isn't it?
Yeah, that you know, that was mixed in multiple rooms, and that had some issues, and it was a bit of work, more work than doing a Blue Note, for sure. I mean, just to be honest, I'm not saying that all the Blue Notes are easy, but yeah, you're right. There is a consistency,
and that helps to keep up the standard, I guess.
I think that's true. I think that's true. Oh, the one other thing that I wanted to mention, going back one step when we were talking about archiving tapes, I think the biggest frustration I have is dealing with Iron Mountain. And I'm talking about Iron Mountain West Coast, not back in Pennsylvania. they have the strangest archival system. They just, each tape has a number, and that is it. It doesn't say the artist. It doesn't say the title. It doesn't say anything in the printout sheets that I get from them. And they cannot tell, I'm kind of telling tales out of school, but I do a lot of work for Concord, and they can't tell Concord which one's the master. So then Concord has to request pictures, which they send to me and say, which one's the master? Oh, it's 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, you know, and it's completely different from dealing with Warner or Capitol or the Tower.
Okay,
wow.
so every company has its own habits. Okay.
Yes.
Good to know. Doesn't make it easier. But when, you know, Danny and me, we really talked about a lot of the development within the last years. You know, you probably are in the same position. If you compare 2020, 2021 with, let's say, 2010, in your workflow, how different is it? What has changed?
Oh, well, it's funny that I think you mentioned 2010. That was actually when I opened Coherent Audio.
Mm-hmm.
So that was when I moved from Camarillo, from Acoustec to my own business. And things have just gone 180. Around very shortly after opening, I was still getting a lot of analog tapes in 2010. By 2015, I was getting almost entirely digital files and no master tapes.
Okay.
And now
Wow.
it's swung back the other way again.
Mm-hmm.
I do occasionally jobs from high res digital. People aren't sending me CDs anymore, which is good. But yeah, so I'd say it's like 85-15, you know, and that's probably what it was in 2010, but it was like 15-85 in 2015. So yeah, anyways. Did I say
So
that?
Kevin,
right?
walk us through the process, if you don't mind, of, you know,
No.
I think everyone would love to get your perspective on, you know, Kevin gets the tape, now what, right? What's the process you go through of, you know, mastering, remastering, cutting the lacquer? Is it like consistent across all tapes and all catalog
No.
titles? What's the story there?
Well, I've said before that we're talking about reissues mostly. If I can get an original copy of the album, a good clean one, that's always nice. Doesn't always happen. So sometimes I'm totally on my own, and sometimes I'm trying to match it, and sometimes I'm kind of trying to match it or keep the essence of it, but maybe bring it forward a couple of decades or more, so that it sounds good on an audiophile system, you know, because so much stuff in the 50s and 60s, and I'm talking here mostly about pop rock, not jazz or classical, but you know, they wanted to make it sound good on cheap players, and they wanted to make it sound good on the radio, and it wasn't just the singles that got EQ'd that way. The whole album, you know, would have a fairly heavy mid-range bump often. I'm not saying always, but on a lot of the multi-track rock stuff from, let's say, 67 through 70, 71, 72, in that range. So, you know, sometimes I tone them down a little bit in the mid-range. Sometimes I allow more bass to go through because they would filter them to make sure they didn't skip on, you know, cheap players. So, and sometimes they would be compressed. And if the compression was done in mastering, I either back off on that or eliminate it entirely, to try to make it more dramatic, more dynamic. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no. Do you? I mean, it sounds like, I guess it's obviously, you know, dependent very much from release to release, where, you know, it's not like a one size fits all approach,
Right?
You know, what is like, and I don't know if you can share this with us, but, you know, what is, like, from memory, a title that you worked on where the tape sounded nothing like the record, and you had to invest a ton of effort into tweaking and adjusting?
You just held one up. You just held one up. Rumors was a good example of that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a lot of EQ on that record.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And it sounds fantastic.
It's mostly just to balance things up from track to track. You know, one song would be bass heavy, one would be bass light.
Okay.
You know, some would have, you know, nice clear treble. Other ones were kind of muffled. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that leads me to a very, for me, very interesting question. You know, mastered by Kevin Gray is one of the trademarks, at least when it comes to us audiophiles who wants the best pressing possible. Can there be a situation, because you are probably aware of it, where you get a tape, or has that occurred, and you say, no, sorry, this, I can't do a Kevin Gray remaster all of this tape?
Well, I do give the label a heads up that it's not going to sound like what people would probably expect out of me, but I've never really turned one away.
Oh, cool.
I guess I'm a mastering whore in that regard. I don't
know. Yeah, because I asked.
I always give it my best shot. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah. I asked the question to someone who brings out a lot of audiophile releases, and I said, why don't we see a Fats Domino? And he said, because the original tapes are terrible.
Yeah. I can't recall hearing one, but yeah, but there are some like that. So there's an engineer, I won't mention him by name, but I'll tell you, he did a lot of work for Atlantic that has always been a struggle working on his rock stuff. His early jazz recordings were wonderful, but once we got into about 1965, anyway, I kind of don't even want to think about it.
So Kevin, what you brought up an interesting point just a moment ago. When you're done with your title, right? You're like, hey, I booked all the engineering hours. I have a finished product that I am confident I can put my name in the dead wax, right? I'm signing off on it. What is like how many folks on the other end of the fence then really care about what this final product sounds like? I mean, I'm sure that Don Was, Joe Harley, obviously all the Blue Note stuff, they're like, hey man, this is phenomenal. This is exactly what we want to hear. But on things that you master for, your garden variety, rock pop record, whatever, what like, do you get input from the executives?
Oh, I do.
Really?
Yeah. When I do work for Rhino on stuff that they're reissuing, that they're really concerned about, I have a lot of conversations with Steve Woolard over there, who's, a bit of a fan of my work, and we have a great rapport. And, I'll go the extra mile to make Steve happy on those Rhino reissues. I'm talking about stuff like Yes, and what else did I do? Oh, Rod Stewart, and yeah, there were quite a few things. Or Faces. It was a Faces box.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, there've been several titles that I've done for them. Bang a Gong, T-Rex, and some of those.
Nice. Yeah,
some of those things. And the same at Concord. I deal with a guy named Chris Clow there, and he's always very complimentary and gives me a lot of great feedback. And so it's nice. So yeah, I mean, yeah, the really big label on the East Coast are a little less nice to deal with, and I don't do that much work for them anymore. But yeah, Warner and Universal keep me pretty darn busy. And not just with Blue Notes. It would seem that way, but
it's the Impulse stuff, which is upcoming, is probably.
Oh gosh, I love that stuff too. And I think one of my favorite jazz album of all time is Blues in the Abstract Truth.
Yes.
Yeah. that just does it for me.
Finally, not Blue Notes. Kind of blue, Danny. Finally.
Well, yeah. I could lump those together. I mean, Blue Note is kind of Blue is kind of on a different level. It's such an iconic record. But
iconic. Yeah. That's a good name for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's
kind of like Fleetwood Mac Rumors.
Pardon me?
Kind of like Rumors.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, everybody knows Kind of Blue. Not everybody knows Blues in the Abstract Truth. So I try to turn people onto that record who've never heard it.
When when it comes to releases like the upcoming Live at the Lighthouse 12 LP box set Lee Morgan, just for know it, how long, how many hours do you spend on listen to this music, on mastering it? It must be an unbelievable amount of work.
No, I'll tell you a little secret on that one.
Please.
That record was remixed by Steve Genowick, who is Al Schmidt's protege.
Wow.
And Steve put in a lot of work on that. And what he gave me was pretty darn good. Not quite what I would expect to get from Al Schmidt, but real close.
Cool.
So it was not nearly as much work as you might think.
Okay, very interesting. Wow. So, but
I'm just being painfully honest here.
That's great.
I'd love to tell you, hey, it took me 10 months to do that record. But,
it comes out at the end of July. I think the 30th.
It's been postponed like twice.
Huh?
It was supposed to have been out in August 2 years ago for Lee Morgan's birthday, whatever that would have been. Yeah.
So your work lies back quite some years back.
Yeah, it's quite some time ago. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and you can't talk about it for all those years.
Yeah, I kind of, yeah. But you know, I love jazz. I love Blue Note, and I love the Blue Note artists. I mean, I know that. Well, actually, that is being released through Blue Note and Universal. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
And I was just listening to the great podcast you and Joe did a couple of weeks ago. I guess Joe was talking about all the upcoming titles for 2022. Yeah. It seems like there's a never-ending bucket list of stuff that's going to be coming out.
Well, what's been fun with that project is it's not all traditional Blue Note, because Universal also owns World Pacific, Pacific Jazz, and a few other smaller labels. And of course, there was UA stuff that wasn't part of Blue Note then. So yeah, there have been some amazing titles that I have just been very excited about.
Chet Baker and Art Pepper. Have you done it already?
Yes.
Is it good?
Yes. Yeah. I love Chet. I love the Chet Baker sings. That's always been a great record.
All those Pacific Jazz titles so far, at least, are absolute highlights in the Tone Sword series, I think.
Yeah. Very, very undermined and undervalued, I should say, catalog. I think there's so much more stuff that can be done on that. There's so many amazing artists and releases out. But anyway, I guess in due time.
Right. Harold, what's his name? Gerald Wilson. A good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if Easter and Christmas will be on one day, and Kevin Gray can wish 3 artists he can do a remaster, which 3 artists would that be?
I think we mentioned them.
We mentioned
Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, and the Stones.
Okay. Yeah, that would be, of course.
Were you talking about Blue Notes? I don't know. I wasn't sure.
No.
How far off base we were getting there.
Yeah,
Carte blanche.
That's a great topic now, because when it comes to the Rolling Stones, in my case, that leads me to half-speed mastering.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take? My viewers know my take on half-speed mastering, and I'm not fond of it at all. What's your take of half-speed mastering?
Well, I think half-speed mastering was there to fix a problem that doesn't exist in the first place. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many people are aware of this, but the way half-speed mastering got going in the more modern era, they used to cut half-speed 45s back in the day because the cutting electronics didn't have enough power. But by the time Stan Ricker was doing all the half-speed stuff that had to be done for the CD4 quad system, when that came to an end, he was left with a half-speed mastering system and nothing to cut half-speed. And that's how he talked Brad Miller into doing mobile fidelity and all of that stuff. And I'm not a fan of the sound. It kind of has a smiley face EQ. You can't fix sibilance problems from analog tape with half-speed mastering. The problem happens in playback, not in cutting. And so, you know, the groove looks exactly the same, whether it's cut half-speed or full speed, as far as high-frequency sibilance and that sort of thing is concerned. And the bottom end tends to get woolly and underdamped, you know, because everything's getting shifted down an octave. So
that's my main.
I've never been a big fan.
That the down and the low end is not.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of that, and never been a fan of DMM for different reasons. But yeah,
you know, it seems like that. You know, the day and age we live in is full of marketing buzzwords, right? And they kind of get marketed obviously as such, and then they become stamps of approval, right? It's like, oh, half-speed master. Oh my God, that must sound better, right? Or DMM, you know, when the lacquer plant burned down, right? Everybody was kind of like, oh, we're gonna have a lot more DMM stuff coming out now. And I always, you know, I always tell people, I'm like, no, dude, relax. Okay. It's not what you think it is. And, you know, chances are, you know, I'll take 140 gram mastered by Kevin Gray record any day of the week over some crazy 180 gram half-speed master DMM, you know, whatever, just because it has all those buzzwords in it.
Right. Yeah, and in both cases, I've done shootouts with them, and I've never lost one. So you know, but you know, no, never mind. Can't really go there. I was going to mention I was going to mention a new trend, but that could bite me in the butt. So I'll shut up.
But let's stay a second, if you allow us, for another buzzword in a way, shootout. Let's compare, and maybe we stay for the beginning with Blue Notes, and nobody else can do that probably better than do. Shootout, original, master tape, audiophile remaster.
Right.
How would you compare those three, the original, the master tape, and in most?
That's a great question, and I'm happy to answer that. I think Joe Harley and I have both been pretty honest that we're not trying to capture the sound of RVG's mastering. We're trying to capture the sound of RVG's original recording. Because when we compare the master tape to an RVG, they're very different. It's kind of an apple and orange. Wow. And I think a lot of that had to do with limitations in the day when they were putting those records out. You know, there was the issue, again, as we talked about before, skipping and making it sound loud and jump off the turntable, that kind of thing. And, you know, RVG tended to pan the sides in a bit. He tended to accentuate the mid-range. He had to accentuated the upper bass and rolled off the low bass, all to make it play on inexpensive players in the day. And we don't have that limitation today. And I think we're giving people something much, much closer to what's on the master tape than what Rudy did. And, you know, frankly, I think I've heard through the grapevine that Rudy was not happy with, he didn't mention us specifically that I'm aware of, but he wasn't happy with any of the reissues of his work that he didn't master. And I don't think that's a not invented here syndrome. I think it's just that he had a different perspective and he's entitled to it. But, you know.
Yeah, and he was one of the first persons who jumped on the digital wagon. I think Rudy Van Gelder was one of the first that said, oh, let's go digital. That's so cool.
Oh, absolutely. He loved it. He absolutely loved it. He felt that it removed all the limitations. I mean, there are limitations to analog. There's no question about it. But it's a sound that a lot of us absolutely love, me being one of them. So, yeah.
What are the limitations when it comes to analog?
Well, there's a little higher. We're talking about analog tape or the phonograph record.
No, what you meant when you said,
I mean, they have to be kind of looked at differently. I mean, there's limitations in the analog tape in terms of the lowest octave of bass. There's limitations, you know, compared to, let's say, the microphone feed coming in and what you're hearing off of tape. And also distortion goes up a bit. There's more third harmonic distortion, considerably more third harmonic distortion on analog tape than there would be on a digital. But even so, that being said, you put a lot of people down in the room and you let them hear the feed and the digital output and the analog output. A lot of people are going to pick the analog tape. It just, it has a thing. It has its own thing, and it's great. I love it.
That's probably the way to go. And
just one other point, and then the phonograph record, you know, you have the issues of, particularly not so much in jazz, but in pop, you know, you got vocal sibilance, and you've got bass excursions that can cause skipping. So sometimes there's some limitations that have to be imposed there to get it to play back properly on less than audiophile grade systems. But you know, it's
Peter Gabriel comes to mind. You know, he was like one of the early proponents of digital as well, for, you know, all the reasons you just mentioned. I remember reading about, you know, he was like, you know, hey, I really, you know, I want to record stuff the way that I hear it. And, you know, I guess it's you know, who knows just how much these guys really can hear these days anymore anyway. Right. I mean, I cringe when I see, you know, Jimmy Page overseen reissue of the Led Zeppelin catalog. Right. And I'm thinking of like, oh my God, you know, I mean, who knows, you know, I don't even want to know what his internal sound quality is like. Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't speak to that at all, but I know what you're saying. What was I going to mention? What did you say at the very beginning? I was going to comment on something.
Peter Gabriel.
Oh yeah, well, just that. It's funny. He embraced digital before digital was really very good, and so did Rudy.
Right.
You know, I don't think digital really even got decent until about '92. The first thing that hit the market that was an eye opener, ear opener for me was the Wadia A to D converter, because we'd all been going. Oh yeah. We'd all been going through the 1630 processors, and then there were the Apogee converters, and none of that stuff sounded very good. It just didn't. And then when the Wadia came along, it was like, whoa, so this is what digital's supposed to sound like.
Okay.
And that was still 16-bit, you know, 44.1, and it only got better from there. You know, I have a Pacific Microsonics, which I just love the sound of. It's maybe not the be all end all in ultimate definition, but it never errs on the side of harsh or ugly. So, you know, it's kind of my favorite go-to converter, both for A to D and D to A. But.
So now we are going in a way, we have been gone back from digital. Now we are all analog in a way.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion, or maybe you know things we don't know? What's the next thing? Will we stay analog for the next 2 decades? What do you think where the journey will take us? Or maybe two parallels, the analog way and the streaming way. What do you think?
Well, I'm already seeing that, although it's funny, there's very little meeting in the middle. It's one or the other, you know, because I'm doing high-res files for download on virtually every new title that I do. Either DSD or 2496 or 24192. So I'm doing a capture of it with my EQ and the way it's done for vinyl so that they'll match. And so a lot of people get those downloads. They don't buy the vinyl. A lot of people love the vinyl and never heard a download. In all honesty, I have not heard the download. I've just heard the files that I've created to make the downloads from. I haven't bothered to go download them to see what's happening, you know, in their process. But
do you see like the modern day artist, or I shouldn't say modern day, let's just say like contemporary artist, you know, whatever genre it may be, do you get the sense that they're like, hey Kevin, I really want the vinyl to sound great as opposed to the digital? Or is it kind of like, are they ambivalent about it, like, hey, you know what, it's going to sound great no matter what because Kevin was involved in it?
Don't really know how to answer that question.
Maybe it's a silly question.
It depends on the client. Yeah, no, I mean, you can kind of tell in a 5-minute conversation with these guys which ones just want to get the Kevin Gray buzz, and which guys really, really love vinyl, you know?
Interesting.
Those are the ones I really like to work with.
So there's a definite, I guess to paraphrase the question, there are definitely artists around that you work with that have a great affinity for vinyl.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, one who I'm going to tout because he's coming back online again. He disappeared for a couple years, is Sean Bettner with what's his company? You probably know.
Yeah. Intervention Records.
Intervention. Thank you. Yeah. Intervention Records. Yeah. So yeah, he's going to be doing some new stuff. He's getting ready to do some more licensing.
That's awesome.
And Sean is the nicest guy in the world to deal with, and number two, one of the most caring, focused guys. You know, we always have a good quality pressing to compare it to, and then we kind of make our decisions on what to do with it. From
Danny and me, we had the huge pleasure to do also a video with Shane Büttner, and what's so striking when it comes to intervention, it's not your, let's call it, typical audiophile stuff. He really goes Murray Head, for example, or Joan Armour's Wedding, and that's also very cool that we have those titles as such great releases.
Right.
Audiophile remaster, and I think.
And some of them are not what I would call the greatest sounding audiophile recordings, but it's really nice to give them the best treatment they can possibly get as an audiophile release.
The Church,
you know,
The Church,
which
the group that the record that's coming out. I guess it's been forever delayed with all the stuff going on, but Starfish, that's coming out. I think it's shipping in July, if I'm not mistaken.
This is for Shane.
Yeah,
that was probably done at Sterling. I don't think I did that title. Yeah,
gotcha.
Which is fine, you know, because if the tapes are on the East Coast, East Coast, he goes to Ryan Smith, and Ryan does a great job. You know, I can't fault Ryan. So
we need. I think we really need more of, for example, what you've done to Rumors, or what Shane Büttner does for 80s and 90s rock. This comes too short, and in a way, when we go back to the beginning and see what classic records had put out with the Who, Peter Gabriel, Led Zeppelin, etc., etc. These titles come a bit short nowadays, and we always have those audiophile remaster, half-speed masters from Abbey Road, for example, Bob Marley, the Rolling Stones, and this is in a way, and I can say that I'm a private person here, a waste. It's just a waste because it's not the standard that we are used from example, you, Kevin Gray, or Ryan K. Smith, and that's a pretty shame because those are extremely important recordings.
Right.
You know, one artist that comes to mind in that light, Michael, is Prince, right?
Exactly.
I think the Prince catalog, man, Kevin, if you would get your hands on that.
I did. I've done almost the entire catalog. I did
on Prince,
right after Prince died.
You're kidding?
No.
Where is it?
I don't know. I'm sure it came out, but I don't think it wasn't a box set. They didn't make a big splash about it. They just were making sure all the stuff was back in the catalog again.
Interesting. I know that
and Aretha Franklin. I did a whole bunch of Aretha Franklin too.
Where are they? I want them.
Oh, they put out
them from you.
They put out a box set of the singles, which was really fun. All the mono Aretha singles.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta get that.
I would send off an email to Steve Woolard and say, yeah.
Where's this stuff?
Incredible.
And I don't know if you heard any of it, but you know, I've remastered almost the entire Kinks catalog.
Yes.
Which was for BMG.
Yes.
So that was fun.
Fantastic. I heard it. A friend of mine got the I think it was a box set.
Yes.
And it's
well, actually there were three. There was an album box set, an EP box set, and a 45 single box set.
Wow.
So
I missed
now that stuff was not audiophile in my book. I mean, you know, those just were not what shall we say? They weren't up to the Beatles standards recording wise. But for what they are, I was very happy with the way it came out. And I'm a huge fan of the music.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can't beat it.
Anything British Invasion, I was big.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things to consider, that of course we love our audiophile stuff, of course, but for me sometimes it's also enough when I know this is as good as it gets. That's enough. If I know this is the most you can get out of the tapes, yeah, I get it. That's what I want. I don't want more, but in a way I don't want less.
Yes.
And there's a lot of room for other releases. Let's hope that they all will come out in the future.
Right.
So, but what I also often said on my channel when I speak a lot about audiophile reissues that comes out, man, the day of Kevin Gray has at least 28 hours. Am I right? Because
it sure felt like it year before last and this year. Last year was a little dead, but no, I hit the ground running in January, and it's been a crazy year this year, and 2019 was also a crazy year. So,
and I can only imagine your schedule gets booked out months and quarters ahead of time. I mean,
it does on some stuff, yes. The bane of my existence is that so many of the labels now are going to Europe because they can't get them pressed in time here anywhere. Not just RTI and QRP. They can't get into Gotta Groove. They can't get into Third Man, whatever. So I have to keep Mondays and Tuesdays open for anything that's getting shipped to Europe, and then that leaves Wednesday and Thursday for domestic, because I don't cut on Friday because I don't want stuff to sit over the weekend. Yeah. So that's my contribution to this crazy industry. But it can make my life a little crazy. Yeah.
But if Danny and me, we decide now we are doing an audiophile remaster, Danny, here are my tapes, and then let's call Kevin. And when would you have the time? So okay, now I do it in April 23 or what?
No. I'm not running those kind of lead times at all. The pressing plants are. As a matter of fact, well, let me just tell you, I try to turn around stuff within about 3 weeks.
Really?
That's about my lead time. I tell people, see, if I've got a big high profile project for a known client, yes, I'll put it on my calendar, but I generally don't start figuring out what I'm mastering until everything is in the queue. They've got their files or their tapes or whatever they're using to me. Then I schedule it because I can figure out what has to fit in Monday, Tuesday, what has to fit in Wednesday, Thursday, and it makes for a little more sanity. But I wanted to touch on something that you mentioned earlier about lead times and so forth. And I think that is my biggest concern. It's taking 8 months to a year for a new client or an existing client on a smaller run to get a record pressed at most of the plants in the US. And I don't know how they deal with that. I actually had ongoing conversations. I had files sent to me and I was getting ready to master a project. And all of a sudden the guy called me in a panic and he said, look, I'm canceling the project. I said, why? What happened? I can't get it pressed within a year anywhere.
Wow.
He's a new label. It's a new artist. It's a great recording. I was kind of devastated because I'd already put some work into it, which I haven't charged him for. Hopefully he'll get it resolved, but it's a major concern. It's like, what is going to happen to the industry if people can't get their records pressed?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, you touched on the lacquer thing, when the Apollo plant burned, I was very blessed that I had been using MDC lacquers from Japan for 2 years before that fire, because I started to get unhappy with Apollos back around 2017. So I switched over almost entirely to MDCs, and I've been able, I've kind of been grandfathered in there, and I've been able to get lacquers. But that shut down Capitol's mastering; they couldn't get lacquers. Period. Yep. And so that was the first concern. Now it's the lead times at the pressing plants. It's like everybody's trying to increase capacity, but there's only so many record presses, and I guess GZ is making new ones, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's
it's truly unprecedented times.
Yeah. And try to get Stoughton jackets. It's not easy.
Oh, yeah. Same thing, same problem.
Yeah.
I met Jack Stoughton for the first time at the Making Vinyl conference in 2019. What a sweetheart of a guy, and his wife. They're both they're amazing folks, and I was very impressed.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons I asked you the question. Let's compare 2010 and 2021. If someone has told you, let's say in 2012, that there will be a 25,000 pieces release, audiophile release for $100 of Kind of Blue, you would have been at least surprised, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yes.
That's quite a development. Yeah. It's
I mean, how many reissues have there been of that record? I'm guessing about 7.
At least.
More, maybe? Holy cow. I mean, it's a great record. I love it. I play it all the time. But, you know, I don't think the world needs another reissue of it. I'm sorry. I just don't.
And we haven't even done the 45 RPM yet.
Exactly.
The new one. There was the classic one.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was so funny. I had the big honor and pleasure to be on the panel with, for example, Michael Hobson from Classic Records and Bernie Grundman, Chet Kasem. And when Bernie Grundman told that he had the Kind of Blue tape, and he put out a knife and said, that's what we do with tapes. I'm not afraid to take my scalpel. And do you do that too nowadays, or isn't that something you do nowadays?
Very, very occasionally. Without mentioning any names about the person or the project, I cut a reissue about a year ago, I guess it was, and they got the test pressings and said, hey, there's a pop right where the vocal comes in on this track, which is an iconic track. You've heard it a million times. And I went and I listened to the tape and I said, it's on the tape. Well, it's not on any of the digital releases. And I said, of course not. They edited it out digitally. Well, then I guess we're going to have to recut that record from the digital file. And I said, I can remove that with a razor blade. You know, and you can, and it won't hurt the tape. And I said, no. You know what it was? It was a vocal punch in. It's where they punched in the recorder to start recording the vocal. I mean, you know, anybody who's worked in the studio any amount of time would recognize that immediately. It's been on every analog release ever since 1965, I guess. You know, so it kind of, and then I'm doing another release. Again, I can't mention it, but same guy in charge, same level of iconic record that everybody knows. And here at the end of the fade, there's this tick, and I'm going, if I don't pull this out, I know I'm going to hear about it. I'm just going to be recutting it. So I might as well just do it now and get it out of there. And so I did. But again, it's been on every analog release of that record since day one.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
which leads us in a way to the warble gate when it comes to the blue note. You know, there has been a lot. You know, maybe to talk a bit about my side, my view. If I get a record which plays around 40 minutes and there is a fraction of a second which is not that perfect, I won't have a big problem with it. But there are other parts of the community, and this fraction of a second is suddenly so important. What is your point of view when it comes to this?
Well, I can tell you what most of those are caused by splices in the original recording. Not to fix a broken tape, but maybe to put in another section from another take when the record was done originally. And those splices start to come apart. They ooze slightly and they stick as they go through the machine.
Okay.
Now you could go through and replace every single one of them. I've had to do that occasionally. Sometimes it's been done before I get the tape. But generally, you know, like you say, if it goes by really fast, I let it go because I know it's been on other issues of the record. But I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah, I get you. I get your point. That's sometimes quite striking how much room this kind of discussions on certain places takes. And that's for me, then I'm out because, as I said, the fraction of a second. Come on.
Yeah.
What can you do?
Well, yeah, I have to be careful what I say, but a lot of those guys on those forums need to get a life.
I was just gonna say it's the forum experts.
You know, one of my favorite things that happens is when somebody will say, "Hey, I heard such and such there." And it's like, "Oh yeah, I heard it too. I heard it too. I heard it too. I heard it." You know, it's like, so there will be 27 posts after it. "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." You know, which they probably, none of those guys would have noticed it if the first guy hadn't pointed, you know, whatever.
Well, yeah.
Kevin Gray, if you consider the work you have done so far, which, as we stated, 2,347, are there, let's say, 1, 2, or 3 releases which stick out to you, which are incredible, important, or where your heart is in a way for what?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I think one of the most iconic albums that I got to work on, and I did it with Doug Sachs, was Dark Side of the Moon for the 30th anniversary. And what was that, 2003?
Yep, 2003,
yeah.
yep.
Yeah, that was a thrill. Love that record. I've listened to it a million times. And the first time we threaded up the tape and hit play and heard the heartbeats, I mean, the chills that went down my spine, I can't describe. I can't describe. And so that was a blast. And working with Doug on it was fun too. Doug was such a curmudgeon, but we worked well on that project. That was one. Getting to do the 50th anniversary reissue of Kind of Blue a year late, because the first one got panned badly by the press. Now that's a pet peeve of mine. They had me specially remaster that. I put my all into it. I was very happy with the way it came out and stand behind it. It never got stickered, and I get emails to this day from people saying, "How can I find out which pressing before I buy it is the one that you did?" And I said, "I don't think you can."
Wow.
I happen to have one because they sent it to me right after it came out, you know,
Yep.
but
Wow.
which doesn't happen very often. I had to request it and probably re-request it and re-request it, and they finally sent me one.
So
those are 2. I don't know. It's very funny. Not only am I remastering things 2 and 3 times, I'm now remastering things that I mastered originally.
okay.
I don't know if I should mention it. I will. I don't think it's out yet. I'm pretty sure it's coming out in the classics series for Blue Note. I did Places and Spaces by Donald Byrd, which I mastered originally in 1975 or whenever it was.
Wow.
And also Bobby Humphrey. What's the title of that one? It was around the same time that it was originally released. So I did both of those albums with the Sky High production guys, who were a bunch of my favorite clients ever. And so I got to reissue those. Another one that was really funny that came in the other day. Okay, when I first got into mastering, my mentor was Bob McLeod, Artisan Sound Recorders. I met him in my first year of high school. He invited me down to the studio. The first minute I walked in the door and watched what he was starting to do, I knew that was what I wanted to do for a living. Total halcyon moment. Okay, the first time he invited me to come down, again, I'm in high school, the time he invited me to come down and actually sit in on a session, it was Ry Cooder's first album, just called Ry Cooder, the one with the Airstream trailer on the front of the, if you know the album. And Doug Botnick was the mix engineer on it. And so I got to sit in on the whole thing. I just reissued that album, or did a reissue of it for Speaker's Corner just like 2 weeks ago. And it was just such a trip to hear this record again that I own and that I had been able to sit in on before I was even a mastering engineer, you know? I was in my first year of high school. So weird things.
Yeah, you're looking back.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
What's like, if you look at something like that you've mastered in the 70s and you're looking at it, you know, all these decades later, what are like the 2-3 biggest improvements that you're capable of delivering today vis-a-vis back then?
Well, my chain is much, much better than what I was cutting on back in those days. You know, I can hype the whole thing. You know, I've built a custom system, all the analog gear, was built from scratch. The tape machine electronics, the tape heads are custom. The everything in the console, the line amplifiers, the equalizers, the limiters are all Class A discrete solid state. And my disc cutting system is all Class A discrete solid state, including 300 watt per channel Class A amplifiers. I didn't have that kind of stuff back then, so I already have a little bit of a leg up, And the tape's going to sound a little bit better being played back on my machine than it would have on a stock Studer back in the day. So I think that accounts for a bit. And then, I'm listening on better speakers. Most of the stuff I was doing in the 70s, I was listening on Westlake monitors. So I don't know.
Cables are probably better. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the whole chain has basically been upgraded considerably.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess the underlying, even as the underlying technologies may not have changed much, it's all the ancillary stuff that really has amplified, I guess, the resolution factor.
Right. Yeah, we put AudioQuest wiring in the whole system back in 2008, I think that was. And then upgraded that wiring when I opened the new room in 2010, 11, right in that transition there.
Wow.
There's been a lot of things like that. So.
But still, of course, your equipment has grown and grown and grown. Of course, I get that. But when it comes to the masters, is it legit to say that this late 50s, mid 60s, and 60s master recordings, the recording technology has been in a way the golden age, and quality-wise are on a higher standard than, let's say, the late 70s, early 80s, early 90s, or
oh, no question. I agree with that 100%. I even wrote a paper about it, talking about how sound did a lot of degradation from about 1963 on. We went into the whole early solid state era, which was followed by the early integrated circuit era, which was even worse, in my opinion. I think things improved going from 4-track to 8-track to 16-track because there wasn't all this bouncing and combining of tracks that had to be done when they got up to 16-track. Then we go to 24-track and it takes another downturn, because the track width is narrower. There's more hiss. So that almost, means that you have to have noise reduction. So, we had Dolby A originally, then Dolby SR. And so there's all this extra electronics that you're going through. And then on the mix side, you don't have, it's hard to get 24 hands on a console, so, or more. And so then we have VCA automation, and it was like, it just went downhill in chunks. It was just unbelievable. And I was there watching it as it happened, going, what's happening to the sound here? And I started investigating that, and that was what I came up with. So yeah, you made a very good point there. So yeah, an all tube recording from 1958 through 1963 is pretty hard to beat sonically. The weakest link in the chain was the Scotch 111 tape.
Okay.
I think even the microphones has tubes in it, right? In that.
Oh, absolutely. And I own 14 vacuum tube microphones, Neumann's, AKGs, and you can't beat the sound. You cannot beat the sound. The solid state counterparts to not every one of those mics, but most of those mics, it was a step down also. It really was. I think what's his name? Russ Ham wrote a paper in the AES about tubes versus transistors that came out around 72. And the point that he made that was really interesting is in the critical early stages, with the microphone being the earliest, if you've got electronics in there, tubes handle overload so much better than transistors do.
Wow.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And then the next stage would be the mic pre, and the next stage after that is whatever compressor you're going through, if you're compressing. And so it really helped to have tubes in those stages.
The headroom
made a huge difference.
Thank
you for asking that question. That's one of the best questions I've ever been asked.
Oh. Okay, now I'm very proud. No, yeah, but
you know, I have a good friend here in Germany. It's Volker Bohlmeier from Einstein Audio, and we exactly talked about, because all his stuff is also always with tubes, and he explained a lot to me with the headroom, and I think that has something to do with what we explained right now.
Oh, the voltage swing differences are huge.
Yeah. Yeah, that's,
and even when a tube goes into distortion, it's much less noticeable. It's not putting out a square wave like a solid state device when you overdrive it. So yeah, it's a huge difference. I won't get really big into this, but I'll just mention it offhand. I have been working for 15 years, since 2005, to build an all vacuum tube recording system from microphones all the way through to the cutter head.
Wow.
Well, to analog tape, if I'm going to tape, or and to transfer to the cutter, or to do direct to disc to the cutter. It's been a huge project, and it's all coming to fruition now.
Wow.
So I'm really excited about it.
yeah.
So you're going to be able to do the whole chain A to Z all in tubes.
All tubes, not a single transistor in the path.
Wow.
I love to hear that. Yeah, that's
So
great.
I think it's going to be fun. The only company I know in the world that's doing this is electrical recording in
London.
you know, with their mastering system in England. And then also there's that label in, well, you probably know, Michael, it's in Europe, could be in Germany. They're doing everything all tube to tape. I think they go to electrical to do the actual cutting.
I think I just got a record from them. Yeah, I know
Tell
what
me
you're talking
about
about.
it then.
What's that?
Yeah, it's they're in Germany. Oh gosh, what is it? I thought I had it here somewhere.
And they're
I
quite
literally
expensive.
just got it.
They're selling for like $100 on those too, I think.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, it's definitely something you can hear. I mean, as far as transparency and all that, with the level of playback quality we have these days,
right?
You know, you can easily hear the difference on you know, going from a solid state to an all tube cutting system and all that. So brilliant. I'm super excited for you.
My all tube
that's so
system
cool to know
is
that you
pretty
go this
amazing. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah.
I'm using Macintosh MI350s, highly modified, to actually drive the cutter head, and
Wow.
what an amazing job they do. I mean, it's just headroom for days.
Wow. So is this something that, you know, at some point is going to get, I guess, marketed?
Yeah, I'm basically starting a label, and it's for
Wow.
it's for myself. I'm not making this available to clients unless they want to come in and record the album and do the whole thing all the way through.
Wow.
I'm not trying to compete with myself, you know.
Yeah.
No, it was just an idea. You know, you've mentioned what I firmly believe in, the golden age, which I would call, you know, 50. Well, you gotta go back to 55, 56 through about 64. You know, I'm trying to kind of capture that essence.
That's awesome.
That's
wow.
great. That's so cool. But
there is a future.
Yeah, exactly.
So you guys get the release, you know, the press release on this, because I really haven't talked about it to anybody. So
that's incredible. Wow.
You drew it out of me. You drew it out of me, guys.
That's fantastic. That's exciting, man. That's awesome.
Totally exciting. Totally. What I always ask myself, because you are one of the few persons who can answer that, how far we have, if you have a really decent hi-fi system, and a beautiful Kevin Gray remaster from the Sidewinder on SRX, how far are we away from the original master tape? Are we very close, or is there still some difference?
There will always be some difference. I mean, when you consider how many amplifiers that you're going through, going from a tape to the cutter head, it's a lot. It's amazing that it sounds as transparent as I feel that it does. You know, it's a very, very slight degradation. If everything is done right, you have to actually quantify it by saying on the outside of a 12-inch LP, you know, the top end rolls down, distortion goes up as you get to the center of a record. It's inherent. There's no way to go get around that really. So, you know, there's limitations in that regard. But boy, when you drop the needle on the outside of the groove and you play it against the master tape, it's amazing how close they sound. It really is.
Good to know. Good to know. And another thing, because this is always a topic throughout the last year in a way. You know, I've shown the 3 sidewinders, for example. And when I listen to those 3 sidewinders, they all sound different. And that's a strange thing in a way, because mastered by Kevin Gray.
Yes.
But I think that it shows that every detail counts.
Matters. Yep.
I can give you a little accounting of why those differences. First of all, the 45 version, because did I do that for chat or did I do that for Music Matters? Music Matters, right?
The one I have the chat, the analog production, and I have the Music Matters SRX on the quiet vinyl.
Oh, the 33. Okay.
Exactly.
Well, when we were doing all those 45s, that was with a different tape machine, and I had not upgraded my console yet. That all happened in 2013, and my system improved seriously at that point. It really did. So that accounts for a difference. Also, the pressing plant makes a difference. The stuff that goes to Europe, I don't know. I might be biting the hand that feeds me on saying this, but there's a difference in the sound of a record pressed on a 2Lex Alpha and a record pressed on an SMT.
Interesting.
And I got into doing these sound tests as far back as the 80s, when Doug Sachs was using RTI for his pressing, but he was having the plating done at KM in Burbank, who had 2Lex Alpha presses. He couldn't get a pressing he was happy with out of there in terms of having the top end and the detail. It wasn't happening. And he could get it at RTI. So he went plating there and then had the metal parts sent to RTI. This has always been a problem with a lot of the pressings out of Europe. You know, like I wish you could hear Dark Side of the Moon pressing that RTI pressed, just as a test pressing for a bunch of people. It sounded better than the one that came out of Europe, and the same thing with Rumors.
Wow.
So
yeah, that was my approach too, because you know there's always this discussion that of course there is not okay, this is a classic, come on, let's do it quick. Of course not, but in the process after your mastering, things go, let's say, differently.
Right.
And even when you say that you improved your system, and I compared this album really sincere and put a lot of time in it, and the analog production and the SRX sounds better. I'm careful now. Better than the classic release. In my opinion, it's always an opinion.
Oh, the classic one?
The classic is.
Well, that was Bernie Grumman. That was a totally different system.
Okay.
You know, that I can understand. And
no. I'm talking about. Excuse me.
The classic series. Yeah, that was pressed. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was pressed in Europe.
Number one, SRX. Number one, number two, 45 analog production.
Right.
I'm just talking about my opinion. Number three, classic series. Yeah.
So you like the SRX best or the 45?
Yeah, the SRX, because
I would agree with you.
Because of the details.
And I would put them in the same ranking.
Yeah.
I'd put them in the same ranking as you did.
So I guess that opens up the conversation to, you know, these new vinyl formulas that are coming out. I guess they do make quite a bit of a difference.
They do. But you know, we're kind of entering another renaissance here on records. If they could just keep the capacity to the point that the industry stays healthy, I think we'll all be, you know, very good in 5 years. Because both Chad and RTI have done a lot of work on that, and I think it's paying off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
amazing.
You know, I have my own explanation why. because in my world, in my explanation, that if you have noise, you lose room for detail in a way.
True.
You know,
Of course.
noise covers detail. And,
Yeah.
and these new formulas have less noise. So
Yeah.
more detail.
Right.
Interesting.
Fascinating.
Very.
I mean, who would have thought that in 2021 we're gonna be talking about new vinyl formulas?
Yeah.
But you know,
Yeah.
it's a really, really funny thing to me when I look back. You know, I got in the industry in '72,
Wow.
and you know, vinyl reigned supreme. You know, even the cassette wasn't really touching vinyl at that point in time. And so I figured, well, you know, I'll retire cutting records. By 1986, I wasn't even doing vinyl anymore. Everything had gone CD. And I thought, well, okay, I'll retire doing CDs. Like, nope, I'll probably retire doing vinyl. I mean, you know, I was kind of in on the vinyl resurgence from the standpoint that, you know, DCC jumped back in '92. I did the heavy vinyl series for MCA in '95, which was the first major label to jump back in.
Yeah.
Did all of that stuff with Tom Berry and Warner in 2005. And so I've watched the exponential takeoff and never could have predicted it in a million years. When Hoffman came to me and said, hey, you know, Marshall wants to start putting out vinyl again in '92, I'm like, what is he, out of his mind? I mean, I just figured it was a dead issue.
Wow.
You know, I was as happy as a clam that he did it, but my initial reaction was, why? I mean,
but
sound notwithstanding, but you know.
And look at what happened.
Excuse me. No, go ahead, Danny. I can do it after.
And look at what's happening on some of the DCC titles that are on eBay. I mean, astronomical prices. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I know. And so often it's for test pressings.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think people get the concept that a test pressing is to approve, and there could be problems with it that were caused it to be rejected. You know, it's like when I see these test pressings going for $300 and $400 and $500, I'm like, oh boy, I sure hope it's a good one.
Speaking of, it's funny you should mention that, Kevin. I don't know if you'll remember, but when we did the first round of test pressings for Meeting by the River,
yes,
somebody's cell phone went off, and you could hear in the pressing the noise from the tower and the phone buzzing.
Yep, I know that sound. Yeah,
and you had to recut it. And so there you go. I mean, I cherish it just because of, you know, historic.
You know what?
I guess.
You know what? I only had that problem one time, and it was with that C37 with the 1-inch head stack. No, there was something, I think it was happening right at the playback head between the head and the input electronics. There was something that wasn't shielded that way. Yes, I had totally forgotten that. I've never had that problem again, ever.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I have it, and you know, I play it, and sure enough, there's the buzzer.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
You know, I got to tell you a very quick, funny story about that. You were there, so you were a witness to it. I did that thing where I actually created an audio CD, and we ran that for preview.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
And I had to delay it manually, you know? Well, apparently Chad told Barry Wolfson at Sterling that that's what we had done. And he goes, that's not possible. And I said to Chad, oh, okay, then we won't do it. Well, you said you already did it. And I said, well, Barry says it can't be done, so I guess it can't be done.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, I remember that. That was insane.
Yeah, I'm very proud of that record too. I love that album. That was amazing.
But let me get back to my question.
Okay.
Have you been one of the persons, like, for example, Michael Fremmer, when the CD came up, he said, oh, we are in trouble now. And because he thought that vinyl is much more better than the CD. Have you been one of those persons too and said, why are we going for the CD? Vinyl is better? Or have you just gone with the flow and said, okay, I have to adapt and do the CD now?
Well, that's also a very good question. By the way, Danny, some of your questions have been good too. I've been really impressed with Michael's. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was taking count here.
No, I'll tell you, Michael. When I first heard the CD, I was like, hey, this is great. No ticks, no pops, no noise, yeah, like everybody, yeah, this is great.
And so convenient.
Until I start, but even sonically, it was nice to have no ticks, no pops, no noise. But the very first time I started comparing the vinyl release of an album to the CD release, I went, huh? I remember the first two titles that I did the comparison on was Michael Jackson's Thriller, and the other was Earth, Wind and Fire's album Rise.
Wow.
One of them had been done by Bernie. One had been done by Doug Sachs. I put up the CD and the vinyl blew the CD away on both of them.
Yeah.
And it was pretty much the same things I was hearing. Didn't have the detail on the top end, didn't have the punch on the bottom. Now, I don't understand that. That shouldn't have been an issue, I don't think. Maybe it was part of the vinyl artifact that everybody loves. I don't know. But, there was no comparison. And like I said, until the Pacific, or the, not the Pacific, Wadia, till the Wadia converter came out in 92, I don't think digital was even close. It was total apples and oranges with vinyl.
Wow.
And today we've got 24 192 with good converters. I won't talk about what they're doing to that stuff in the mastering, but just as a recording playback format, it certainly has the resolution of vinyl. I don't think there's personally, I don't think there's an argument about that. But there's still this thing about the vinyl that you're not going to get without some kind of a plug-in, if they made such a thing. That I still will almost always pick the analog over the digital. I just like the sound of it better. So when I'm not talking accuracy, I'm just talking about how
the sound,
how it emotionally grabs me. Yeah. Oh, can I tell you another story? Back in 2011, when I did the box set of the Mahler symphonies for the San Francisco Symphony.
Okay.
Did it directly for them. They released it themselves. They did some kind of a Kickstarter or some kind of thing like that. They had to have enough sales before they even mastered it to guarantee that it was viable. And they got it and they did it. And I think they only put out, was it 100 sets or 500 sets? I don't remember, but it was a small, relatively small release. But, I'm working from original digital tapes. And the guy, his name was Kaiser, I don't remember his first name, who kind of oversaw the project from the business standpoint, but he was an audiophile. He owned 2 turntables, and we had a lot of discussions. And Jack Vad, who was the recording engineer for most of that stuff, came down and worked with me on it. And we spent an entire day cutting refs of what we felt were going to be the problem parts on it. And we cut it virtually without compromise. We made a couple small level changes just to bring up a couple of low movements and stuff like that. We didn't do any limiting. We didn't do any, processing really to it. And, the record was heavily scrutinized against the SACD. I can't believe how many people said they thought the vinyl sounded better in those comparisons. And
I'm not surprised.
And even
I'm
Jack
not surprised in the least.
Even Jack Vad came out and he said, I forgot just how amazing vinyl can sound. He'd been away from it for over a decade.
Funny you bring that up, Kevin. I obviously, friends come and go and stuff, and they're all like, oh wow, I want to hear this, or I want to hear that, or I don't buy into the whole vinyl thing. I listen to digital, and I'm like, you probably have never heard a great record. And, invariably, obviously I'll pull out your stuff. I'll pull out other stuff. One of the records that I play a ton for people is an original Telarc of Time Warp that came out in 78, I think, 79.
Right.
And it's a digital recording, right? They use that, what was it? Soundstream. Yep. Soundstream. And man, the dynamics and the bass on the record are nothing like what's on the CD.
I'd like to hear the vinyl. I've only got the CD of it.
I'm telling you, Kevin, the vinyl sounds so much better.
I believe it.
So much better than the CD. And they were like, how can that be? This is like from the digital file. How, it was done from the, the same mastering. I'm like, dude, I don't know. I mean, you heard it. It just sounds so much better.
Yeah. Well, I haven't heard that comparison, but yes, I've heard that comparison on other records. And yeah, it's apples and oranges.
Amazing. Truly amazing.
It's kind of a shame that the CD came out when it came out. If they had waited, would have been close to a decade. People would have been hit with something much better, but whatever.
No doubt.
It doesn't save us from the CD. If they put it out too early, I probably agree. For sure, that's right, but doesn't change anything. It was a dominating media for 25, 30 years. And it almost destroyed vinyl. Almost.
Yes. Yes.
Now vinyl is much bigger than the CD.
Isn't that funny?
It's so funny.
Yeah, see,
it's crazy.
I wish I had a crystal
So
ball. I never could have predicted that.
Yeah, but
Crazy.
Come on, look at that. The jacket.
I know.
It's something Leonardo da Vinci would say. It's
a work of art.
It's a work of art. It can't get better. It can't get better.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect. It's simply perfect. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it will stay for the next decade at least. Or do you know of a secret technology which comes?
No, no. I love vinyl. I want to see it continue. It's been very, very good to me. So.
Yeah, and
I think vinyl's going to be
you are
around.
one of the main protagonists who your share or your influence in the upcoming of vinyl again is big part on your side, of course. Yeah, because I always discuss with people, and I think collecting vinyl in the 70s, 60s, early 80s is in a way something completely different than collecting vinyl nowadays. Because back then there was no alternative. Yeah, of course I get a vinyl.
Yeah,
what audio cassette maybe, but come on, only for the car. But nowadays, it's something because of the quality, because it's a terrible, inconvenient product.
Yes.
Hey, you know what? I always say there's a reason why Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 have a vinyl record on them, right?
Well, they have a gold record, but yes.
The gold record, right? But there's a reason they have that on there, right? I mean, it's like it's such a genius playback medium that it's so simple, and yet it contains so much information, and it can sound so incredibly high fidelity. I sincerely doubt that in 30 years' time, you're going to be able to play back a 24-bit 192 recording. I could be wrong, but I don't know. I mean, the vinyl record, you're always going to be able to play it back.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. I could tell you the whole history of that Voyager record too. That would be a whole other Zoom meeting, but I was kind of in on that too.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't do it, but I was working for Location Recording Service, and Steve Guy cut it, and there is nothing but misinformation about that record on the NASA site. I don't know where they got that info. It's all wrong. It's all wrong. I can even tell you why. Richard Heiser, the guy who invented time delay spectrometry for audio, for measuring loudspeakers in rooms, he worked at JPL. And Carl Sagan came directly to him because he was an audio technical guy and said, we want to do this. And Richard was like, hey, okay, that sounds cool. He went to a Hollywood Sapphire Group meeting and said, hey, we're going to do a record and put it up in space. Anybody want to do it? And Steve Guy said, yeah, I'll cut it. That's how the whole thing ended. Yeah. True story.
It's amazing. I love it.
That's cool.
Didn't they just put that record out?
They've been talking about it for years. Did it finally happen?
I think so. I think it just came out a couple of years ago.
I mean, they put out the audio from it on a CD, but you mean they put it out as a phonograph record? Awesome. I want one.
Yep. They put it out, and I forgot again. It kind of brought back this whole thing. A friend of mine asked me, "It's like, dude, is this for real? Like they had a record. There's a record up in space." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, of course."
Yep.
And he's like, "I don't get it. Why didn't they send a digital file?" I'm like, "Dude,
There weren't any.
yeah,
It
exactly.
was 1977, right?
Right. You
Yeah.
know, so I mean, but yet a record, you know, whoever has, you know, some level of intelligence, right? They're going to be able to figure out how to play it back.
Well, it has right in sort of stick figures on it how to play it, because it's analog. You know, they're showing that it spins and you put the needle on it. You know,
Yep.
how do you explain to somebody
they will
how to
figure
play a
it
digital file? Because they would probably have a totally different way of encoding the input.
But if there isn't a Kevin Gray in the dead wax, they say, oh no, it's not audiophile.
That's right.
Okay.
Crazy.
All right. Well, this has been very fun, guys.
You have been amazing. It's so amazing. You know, I've doing my channel now for 1 year. Last year, someone would have told me, you will talk to Kevin Gray in a year. I said, you're crazy. It's such an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do that.
Kevin, you're awesome.
Hey, thanks, guys. No, it's been a blast.
And thanks so much for all
Sincerely
the beautiful
appreciate it.
music you provide us with.
Yes.
It's really cool.
Well, you're most welcome. It's especially when you talk about the Blue Note stuff. It's been a labor of love, because I've always loved that music. So you know, people ask me to this day, don't you get tired of doing all that Blue Note stuff? It's like, nope. Bring it on. Bring it
timeless.
on.
Yeah,
It's
but
timeless.
a running gag between Danny and me, and I said it was, you know, I think Kevin Gray, when his phone rings, he thinks, oh please don't let me do another Sidewinder.
Yeah.
Well, I might say that. You know, I think 3 times is enough on any of these, but particularly a new title, I'd always be happy to
Yeah,
do
and there's
that.
a plenty
awesome.
of coming. I think this to go back to the beginning in a way, this Tone Poet series is so important in so many ways,
Right.
and they provide us.
You're talking about you know, being surprised on vinyl sales and on the longevity of the record. What blows my mind is if you go to the Amazon jazz charts, we've had 7 of the 10 on there for like the last year.
Incredible.
And I think we have number 1 and 2 this week.
Incredible.
So
Yeah.
Incredible.
See,
I mean,
Amazing.
who'd have thunk in 2021, you know?
Kevin, please
More to come.
keep them coming, please.
All right.
We need your stuff.
I appreciate that very much. I
Thanks,
really
Kevin.
do. You know,
Thank you
I don't take any accolades for granted. I really don't. I really appreciate that people appreciate what I do. You know, I
do.
think it's,
Absolutely.
I'm honored.